Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Vandergrift, and I'm a man on a mattress who watches movies. I decided to start this podcast because I'm a lover of all things film and filmmaking. And since I watch the majority of movies right here in bed with my captain partner, I couldn't think of a more appropriate name or setting for my platform. Today, I have probably one of the biggest Disney fans I have ever met, and a longtime friend, Samantha Postema. Hopefully, I said your last name right because that's the first time I've actually said it out loud since you've gotten married.
Yes, you were close. It's Postema. Yeah.
Postema. Okay, fantastic. And I can't be more pleased to have you with me today, Sam.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. When you asked me to do this, I can't tell you how excited I was to talk about the topic, but then, get to discuss movies with you like we used to do back in the day.
I know. I missed it so much, but luckily I decided to do this, so it gives me the opportunity to get in touch with people again. So I'm really excited about this too. Now, I am bringing you on as a Disney fan because obviously this is going to be a pretty fun subject about one of the best moments in Disney history. Um, and this is a topic that I think most 80s and 90s babies are going to get really excited about. And I am only doing this one specific time span just because it would be an absolute disservice to Disney and the legacy that he's left over the past 100 plus years in just one episode. And since I'm going to touch on it a little bit more in future episodes, I figured that I would just go ahead and cover the Disney Renaissance. How's that sound to you, Sam?
Oh, that sounds amazing, particularly because, these are the movies of our childhood, being born in 1989 and, in my opinion, they're the best of the best.
That's exactly right. I mean, even the golden age, I feel, doesn't hold a candle to the flame that the Disney Renaissance had lit. So,
No.
um, yeah. Now, before we get into it, I just want to say right off the bat that I'm not going to be able to cover all 10 of the movies in the Disney Renaissance. I did pick a select few that might shock a few people, but since I wanted to maybe cover the different films and have somebody on who represents the different races and cultures that are touched on in the other movies that won't be discussed today, that we just go ahead and talk about the few that I had selected. But before, yeah, let's talk about how the Disney Renaissance started. It spans, like you said, from 1989 all the way until 1999. And like I had mentioned, it's 10 animated movies, and it proved to be a much needed return to form for the company because they were in grave danger. Now, Sam, do you know the 10 movies off the top of your head? And bonus points if you could do it in order of their release date.
Oh, I was going to ask you, does it have to be in order?
It does not have to be in order, but you do get
Okay.
10 points. You do get 10 points if you can.
Okay. So I'm going to try to do it without looking at the page because obviously I have some notes written down. But
Okay.
Little Mermaid, 89, Rescuers Down Under in 1990, which I totally, when I think of the Renaissance, I don't think of that movie. And so
Yeah.
I had to remind myself that that's part of the top 10.
Yep.
So then, came Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, there's Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan.
You got every single one of those right, Sam, in
Oh,
order.
I
I'm
worked on it.
Yay! That's what studying does for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, you did mention the Rescuers Down Under doesn't feel like a Disney Renaissance movie. I feel you. It just doesn't have that I mean it's still sweeping and it's fantastic. It's probably actually one of my top favorites of the Disney Renaissance, but it just doesn't have that same sort of balance of like love and the what's at stake for a country and whole, or you know what I mean?
Oh, for
So
sure. Like you said, I love that movie. It's so great. but it doesn't, strike me as, I think of these films as Disney was trying to go for that Best Picture Oscar award. They were going for these sweeping cinematic, love stories
Hmm.
that pulled a punch. And, Rescuers Down Under, great movie, but I don't think of it in that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, a movie that I do feel does kind of hold. I mean, it doesn't have that sort of princess mentality to it, but I do feel that it's kind of like the undeserved or like the not talked about Disney Renaissance movie, and that's The Great Mouse Detective, which came out, I believe, in 1986.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Of
That was
course.
one that our family, we watched that a lot, and I when I talk to people, they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, but we watched it a lot and we really enjoyed it growing up." So,
Yeah, it's a little more adult themed too, which I really appreciated. Like the animators weren't treating us like children when we were watching this movie.
mhm.
But yeah, The Great Mouse Detective actually comes out at a really crucial time for Disney because they, you know, I don't want to discredit movies like 101 Dalmatians, but if you look at that sort of style of animation, it's very scratchy. Some of the works kind of it looks unfinished in a lot of ways, the animation. And that's not to discredit the stories by any means. It's just that Disney was pushing out these projects on the cheap, so they can make a quick buck. And one of the animators who had seen this happening over the course of a couple of, I think it was over like the course of 5 years, was Don Bluth. And Don Bluth, if you recognize his name, he is the name behind movies like American Tail and the Land Before Time.
Yes.
So he ended up bringing up to Disney heads that he was noticing the culture shift of the animation style and that it was looking a little bit unfinished, and he didn't get his way and he ended up leaving Disney. And he took I mean, this is greatly debated, and I try to do so much research and find a lot of sources that gave the exact number. But did you know that Don Bluth in 1979 took 14 animators with him?
I didn't know the exact number. I had heard, like it was 10, but I knew that it was a lot, and I didn't know precisely the reasoning behind his leaving, during Fox and the Hound. I
Yeah.
know it was probably like artistic differences, but I'm not familiar with his exact reason.
Yeah, he felt that it was a disservice to Disney, because after Disney died, um, he yeah, Disney didn't know what to do, and they were just pushing out these projects, and yeah, like I said, they didn't have the best finished quality.
Right.
Those solid lines that outline our favorite characters and things like that. So Don Bluth ended up starting his own company, and out comes Secrets of Nim,
I
and
love that movie.
it's such a fantastic movie. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, Don Bluth and this new company was taking over the box office, and that was Disney's monopoly almost
Mhm.
in the early 40s 50s, because no one had done live action or full length animated movies before. And so yeah, he ended up really kicking Disney in the butt because they realized that they couldn't do cheap projects anymore. They actually had to throw money in to what they were doing. So the reason that I bring up The Great Mouse Detective is because it shares a lot of the animation style of the Renaissance, including adding CG into the animation. Like that clock tower when Ratigan and Basil are
Yes.
fighting, that is one of the most monumental points in the movie, and it's all done with CGI. And that is something that we would see in later movies like Beauty and the Beast when they're dancing in the hall. And
Hmm.
so I do feel that the Great Mouse Detective does deserve um, much of the credit for the course that led to Disney's animation department. But I think that we need to give a little bit of, I think that we need to give a little bit of credit to Don Bluth as well. Do you feel that Don Bluth rightfully owned the 80s?
In my opinion, and this is being a huge Disney fan, I think he did. Because when I think of Disney in the 80s, my first thought it goes to the Black Cauldron. And have you
Mm.
seen that?
Yeah, actually, my partner just showed me it a couple months ago, and
Okay.
I loved it, but it does not feel like Disney.
No, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. And I know that at the time it was known as the film that almost killed Disney,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw it, gosh, maybe 5 years ago because I didn't see it when I was younger. And now I know it's because it wasn't even released on home video until 98. And that's
Mm.
because at the time it was the most expensive Disney animated film with a 44 million budget and it only grossed 21 million.
Yeah.
So, they took a big hit with that. And when I think of the 80s, I think of, like you said, American Tail, Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven,
Mm-hmm.
um, everything, from Don Bluth. So that's, you know, unfortunately, Disney kind of lost their way and, they snuck in, Fox and the Hound and Oliver and Company and Great Mouse Detective. But I don't think at that time they held a candle to Don Bluth's work.
Yeah, I agree. And the funny thing is that this wouldn't be the first time that Disney would do this to someone who was running the animation department, or at least was a part of the animation department. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But yeah, no, it's really funny because even when the little when the Little Mermaid came out, the year prior, or the year prior to Little Mermaid coming out, Oliver and Company came out against The Land Before Time. And while Oliver and Company did make a profit, The Land Before Time executed it uh, successfully. I mean, getting George Lucas and Steven Spielberg on board, they they toppled. They conquered them in the box office. So yeah, a lot was riding on The Little Mermaid. So with that said, I think that we should just go right into it. But before we do, Sam, I don't want to go over the original stories that the movies were adapted from, just because we all know that Disney fluffed up really horrifying plot points from the originals.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's really something that is necessary. I think it would be very boring to the listeners, and I just don't want to do it. So,
Works for me,
all right.
If we did,
Fantastic.
it'd probably turn into a horror podcast, which isn't, bad, but that's another whole other genre.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there are other people who, even as a horror fan, they would be able to cover that a lot better than I would. So, but yeah, let's get right into it. So, The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
Do you know who directed that movie?
No, I don't actually do.
So, yeah, it was two directors. It was Ron Clements and John Musker. And
Okay. Yeah.
they also wrote the project.
Okay.
Um, Now they were trying to get this. They were trying to get the Little Mermaid on screens for about 50 years before it made it to or yeah, until it made it to theaters. Um, Now, how does this particular project, or what does this particular project mean to you?
Well, I mean, who doesn't love The Little Mermaid?
Right.
Everyone our age, grew up loving it. And even my nieces today, they love The Little Mermaid. And it's really special because I think, in my opinion, it's one of the first times that adults and children alike could see a movie and like I feel like adults could appreciate that this, even though it's an animated film, it's an amazing work of art. It doesn't have, just because it's for kids, adults could love it too. And growing up, I had everything Little Mermaid. You just wanted to be her, you wanted to sing the songs, and it just paved the way for our brilliant childhood memories, including those Disney
Mhm.
films. So it means a lot.
That's that's great. Yeah, and it's strange though because it does mean a lot, and so it seems weird to me that it took 50 years to make it to the screen, because now we look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, we could have had this. I mean, not us, you and me, because obviously we were born the same year as this came out, so this
Hmm.
is our a whole life.
Yes.
But yeah, this movie was, even compared to movies like Snow White, because that was a movie that they Disney put all their cards on the table, and if they failed, they failed, and luckily Snow White moved adults to tears. I mean, theaters were flowing tears as soon as they opened the door. It was just a river of salty water. And but I don't think that movies like Snow White, they didn't really grab or captivate me as a child. So
Hmm.
when you said yeah, this is a movie that is able to speak to adults and children, and it was like the first time in Disney's repertoire that they were able to do that, it's very true. I very much agree. Because even movies like Cinderella, again, there's nothing sweeping about it. There's nothing that really speaks to both genders, or speaks to, or all genders. Actually, let me not put that in a box, but
Hmm.
um that's a different story or different discussion. But yeah, this was also the first time I think that parents and kids were actively watching these movies together. um so yeah, 50 years to the screen just seems like a disservice to me. And even in 1975, it was proposed to, or actually, Ron Clements wanted to propose the project, but he kept on getting pushed, shoved down.
Okay.
And eventually, he ended up bringing it up to Jeffrey Katzenberg at a spitball meeting. And they were like, no, no, we don't want to do this, because another movie at the time was being filmed, and they thought it was too similar. Do you know what movie at that time it was?
Okay, I'm not sure, but I think I do because I think I already saw this in a documentary. Is it Splash?
It is
Okay.
Splash. Yeah.
I
And
even Googled it and I was like, I'm not sure. I don't know, but
yeah,
yeah.
no, it is Splash. Yeah, Jeffrey Katzenberg didn't want to do it because he felt that it was, um, one, too similar, but then he also felt that it was too girly. Like, he felt that putting Splash would draw boys, or putting Splash before Little Mermaid would draw boys away from the project. And
Really?
that's actually
Okay.
one of the reasons why the Little Mermaid opens with the pirates and the men singing, which seems to have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
That was actually put in to draw boys to the seats.
Okay. I did
Yeah.
not know that. That's really interesting. Also, I do have to, apologize to you. It is storming here in Ohio, and I have 5 dogs. And so if you hear them barking in the background, please disregard it. I'm so sorry because I can
Eh,
hear them barking, and I'm not sure if you can.
Hey, that's okay. Everyone likes dogs, and if you don't, I don't know if I really want you listening to this podcast. So,
Right. You're not,
um,
you can't sit with us. You can't
right,
listen with us.
yeah, right, exactly. um, so yeah, but Jeffrey Katzenberg said that yeah, he was afraid that it would be too girly, especially with having Splash released at the same time. But 24 hours later, apparently, Jeffrey Katzenberg had a change of plans, because he ended up greenlighting that project as well as the aforementioned Oliver and Company. But to kind of side track, do you know who Jeffrey Katzenberg is?
Yes. I just know he's big headshot there. He was head of the Walt Disney Studios and, was basically responsible for the main four, the Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King.
Exactly. And I'm so happy that you kind of cut it off at the Lion King, because we'll talk about that a little later. But he was the co-founder and CEO of DreamWorks Animation, and he gave us the fantastically offbeat and weird Shrek that we all love or hate.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I don't see anyone hating
I
the
was like,
first Shrek.
I love Shrek.
Oh, it's so good.
Yes.
And then Jeffrey Katzenberg actually just started the very recent short form streaming platform, Quibi. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I actually heard of it from you, and I didn't know Jeffrey Katzenberg was behind it or anything, and so it's very new to me.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I actually recommend Quibi to folks. There is actually a 90-day trial, a free trial if you guys want to get into it. It's really awesome if you have any commutes or a lot of time on your hands now that we're stuck inside. So
Right.
just something to consider. 90 days free. What is there to lose?
Right.
But yeah, so Jeffrey Katzenberg is known as the godfather of the Disney Renaissance, and by Ron Clements coming to him and saying that, hey, I could rework this pretty horrifying fairy tale into this movie for kids. We were given the start of the Renaissance. But there is one man in particular that I like to give all the credit to for the Renaissance, and I want to see if maybe you can guess who I'm talking about in general.
I mean, it has to be Alan Menken, right?
You are 110% right. He is, I mean, Alan Menken is on par with composers like John Williams, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You can listen to his music over and over again. You can, as soon as it starts, you know what movie you're watching.
Yeah.
So this was his first movie as a composer.
Okay.
Yeah. And he ended up winning 2 Academy Awards. One for Best Original Song, and the other one was for Best Original Score. Do you know what song won Best Original Song?
Under the Sea one, right?
Yes, you're
Yeah.
right. I mean, it's like testing you is going to be no fun. You're like the kid in the back of or actually you're in the front of the class with your hand up the whole time. So.
that actually would be me, like the Hermione, like ooh. But
yeah.
I've learned a lot from this podcast already. So hey, give credit where it's due.
All right, okay. Hey,
yeah,
I could brush off my shoulders. That's fine with me.
You need to. I'm impressed.
So yeah, no, Alan Menken, he ended up winning Academy Awards for 4 out of the 6 movies he worked on in the Disney Renaissance. And that was for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Pocahontas. But then he was nominated for the other 2 as well. And that's Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules.
Which Hunchback was during 97, and no one was going to beat James Horner's Titanic. So
exactly.
I feel like that's not fair.
I don't think any movie that went up against Titanic that year felt that they had a fair shot at anything. But
no,
let's be serious. Titanic is a classic. So
yeah,
I'm still not mad about it.
Oh yeah, you know me and Titanic too. Just anything 90s. I'm still stuck in the decade.
Yeah, it's just luckily we're not wearing the clothes from the 90s. So
oh no, I've got the high rise jeans on.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey. I mean, but you rock the look though, so.
Thank you. You can say that and be nice, and you don't have to make fun of me.
Well, I'll make fun of you on Facebook, no doubt.
Yes, please.
Um, but yeah, so Alan Menken, he he kind of changed the course of the Academy Awards. I mean, only for a brief time, but he was winning so much that it led to the extremely unpopular decision to split the original score categories into Best Original Score and Best Original Score Musical or Comedy, taking a page from the Golden Globes.
I didn't know
Um,
that.
it's so stupid, and
Yeah.
the Academy voters were like, no. They're like, yeah, it may be unprecedented, but we're not gonna stop awarding somebody who's talented, and we don't split up any other categories into genres. So why are we doing it for music?
Yeah. How long did they do that for?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe that it was from 1996 to 1999.
Okay.
It was before my time because I started watching the Oscars in, I believe, 2002. Because I started watching after September 11th because I just needed like something grand, and obviously that happens just a few months after. So that was like the first time that we watched like these huge award shows after something so horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the only reason why I remember starting to watch that year. But ever since I started watching, it was all in one category. So
Right. Okay.
yeah. So Alan Menken, yeah, I mean he's, like I said, I feel like he is kind of solely responsible for the Renaissance. Do you think that that's a little bit too broad of a statement, or do you kind of agree with me there?
I 110% agree with you. I'm really big on music, and without his music and these classics, they wouldn't be the same, and it wouldn't last in the memories of like us as adults and as children. You're humming the songs all day long. I mean, to this day, I'm still like belting out Part of Your World, and my husband's like, Sam, stop, but like, I just think music and movie score, or yeah, movie scores completely change the whole dynamic of the movie. And, for example, this isn't Disney, but like a mediocre film like Dragonheart, which I love, with
Yeah.
Sean Connery, voicing the Draco, and but that movie has such a lasting impact on me because of the final score. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's To the Stars, and it's by composer Randy Edelman. Um,
Mm.
oh gosh, so beautiful, and it's been used in countless other films. But like, it's just something like Dragonheart. Like that's not a very memorable film, but the music to like I'm never gonna forget it, and I just feel like Alan Menken did that for us with these Disney films.
I agree. I agree. There's no room for debate there. But to kind of go away from the making of The Little Mermaid, because we definitely have a lot of ground to cover. Um, I wanted to talk about the plot itself, and I guess
Okay.
because I like Ariel. I think she's so sweet. She's just, wide-eyed, bushy tailed, not bushy tailed because she's a
You can say
mermaid.
that. Yeah.
Slimy tailed, um, 16-year-old, and it seems like she has such uneven motivation in The Little Mermaid. And like, mind you, this is all nitpicking because I love this project. But you watch her sing, or you listen to her sing A Part of Your World, where she makes it very clear that she wants to be in the world of humans before she ever even meets Eric. And
Hmm.
she even says in it, bright young women, sick of swimming, ready to stand. And it sort of preludes to an almost Moana-esque motivation of self-discovery. But then immediately after the boat goes over and she meets Eric, and then all of a sudden it switches from her motivation being herself to men. And I'm wondering, do you think that it could be problematic setting up a scenario like that for young women?
I mean, well, so it gives me a lot to think about. Growing up and even today, I romanticize everything. And
Hmm.
maybe this is possibly influenced by my love of the early, Disney princess films.
Hmm.
But I think with her independent streak that you witnessed early on in the film, she was bound to fall in love with a human, just because
Mm.
she's yearning to have legs, to be a part of that world. And it just happened to include Eric, and he's just, I'm gonna say the icing on the cake. But
Yeah, that's true. That he is fine.
he is so good looking. Draw him some more.
Right.
But we have to, you have to remember she was 16 in the film, and what of like I know myself as a 16-year-old, you see a cute boy and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like that just changes." And so, all motivation changes. So, I think it was maybe a realistic view, but
Mm.
I think the tables, nowadays, they've obviously turned into a more direct approach of self discovery and self motivation in films like, Moana, Brave, Frozen, which is really refreshing. And I'm glad to see that these different types of self discovery, they're represented, and to remind women that they don't need a man to save them, etc. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's problematic in Ariel's case because she is very independent and she does want to see a different world and she wants to immerse herself in that, and but it just happens that she falls in love with a prince. So that's my take on it, I
I,
guess.
I I like that actually. That makes me truly look at her a little differently hearing that opinion from you. Um Now, another thing I wanted to touch on really quickly was um because yeah, there was actually there are two things I want to touch on really quickly, but the first I want to ask is there any Disney movie, because I can't think of any, and I even tried to like go through Disney Plus to kind of see what projects they had, but can you think of any Disney animated movie where a blood relative or a blood parent like maliciously or intentionally abused their son or daughter?
um you know Off the top of my mind, I can't distinctly like remember any sort of emotional abuse. You think of Rapunzel, but that wasn't a blood relative,
Yeah.
so I can't say, there's little instances of parental reprimands,
Hmm.
like in
Yeah, of course.
Pocahontas, but nothing that I can say off the top of my head that would be from a blood related relative.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is because I watching a Little Mermaid again, I was kind of shocked. I mean, I remember the scene obviously, but my jaw hit the ground when her dad, King Triton, destroys all of her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is full on emotional abuse." It is there's no real way to like look around it. It is emotionally abusive to destroy someone else's property regardless of if they are your daughter or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I say kudos to Disney because immediately after this, that's when Ariel goes to seek out Ursula's help. And the reason I say kudos is because I think that it successfully shows how kind of controlling your children or not letting them be their own person could lead them to self-destructive behavior. Do you view that scene a little bit differently as an adult? Because yeah, it kind of hit me a little bit differently than it did as a child.
I mean, now that you say it and you say it in that way, I can definitely see how that would be super problematic to a child. And I'm not a mother yet. I can't speak for all parents, but like I just know that you need to try to help and understand your well, in this case, daughter's point of view, instead of flying off the deep end and maliciously hurting their feelings and prompting, said rebellion, um, which I know is easier said than done. I'm an Aries. I'm automatically hot-headed. And, to carry your point of view like in a physical destructive way is not good in any circumstance. And so I definitely, gosh, can see how that could, put her in circumstances that she shouldn't be in.
Yeah, yeah. It's it was yeah. I mean, it's strange watching things as adults and being affected by it, especially for like an animated movie. So again, that touches on the point that you made earlier, where this is a movie that actually does speak directly to kids and adults without seeming like it's trying too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did want to cover the song "Kiss the Girl," but I feel like so many people have had their Facebook debates over it, over whether or not it's problematic and
Mm-hmm.
if she's able to give consent. Obviously, I watched the movie and I know that Ariel is begging for Prince Eric to kiss him. I also do feel that in a lot of ways she does give consent in the physical ways, and obviously she can't speak. But I wanted to briefly ask and just say, is there anything that you would have Ariel do instead, or have Eric do instead, that would give her a chance to voice consent without a voice?
Consent without a voice.
Yeah, like with the
Um,
song "Kiss the Girl," like because they're just saying "kiss her," like you don't
right.
have to wait for her to say anything. Just do it.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that that's a tough question,
Yeah,
because she, in my opinion, she like you, and you agreed with this too, she does voice her consent that she wants to win his heart before she loses her voice,
exactly.
and she tells her friends that, she wants to, choose this world for him. And her friends, Sebastian and Flounder, know that she needs to kiss him, or she'll be trapped with Ursula forever. So like I I feel like there is like a scene in there where she goes in while they're on the boat during the song "Kiss the Girl," and she leans in to kiss him, and
Yeah.
he has this like shy moment or something, and he turns his head,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's
Yeah.
her
I think.
offering consent. I
Yeah. I
Gosh, it's
think
so
that some
hard.
people. I think that some people, and I. This is in no way to discredit the Me Too movement at all. I support it. Seriously, if you need a voice to back you up, I am here for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this is a little bit of a far reach, and trying to make problems out of past projects.
Right.
So yeah, that was a little bit of a subject I wanted to touch on, but
Yeah, I can
I
understand
think that,
it.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, no. But by all means,
Oh,
continue.
I can understand it without any backstory. If you just look at the lyrics, like it don't take a word, not a single word, go on, kiss the girl.
Yeah.
Um, you don't go around kissing people without their consent. But, in terms of the movie and with Ariel wanting the kiss and actually going in for a kiss, I think
and
you just have
and
to
they I
take it in
think
its
they
context.
I think they both expressed their love too. Like,
Yeah.
we know that these two love each other at first sight. And besides, like, he's 18, she's 16. Let the teenagers be fucking teenagers. All right.
Right. Yes.
Like, I wanted to talk about, well, actually, I wanted to kind of give you the stand for a couple minutes and just talk about our next movie and what it means to you. And that is Beauty and the Beast. So
Oh
I'm
gosh.
gonna I'm gonna go ahead and just sit back and kind of hear what this movie means to you.
Well, I mean, this is a big one. I love cinema, and I have for as long as I can remember, movies and going to the movies. But well, before this pandemic, are a huge part of my life. And I love discussing them. I love watching them. But I have to say, and you judge me all you want, but Beauty and the Beast is my favorite movie of all time. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact, besides it being a brilliant story, beautifully, written and composed, um, I think a lot of it has to do, it's the very first movie that I actually remember going to see at the theater. I remember, and I was, young. My
Mm.
grandma took me and we went to Burger King first. And, I was so excited because I got the Bell toy and my kids' meal. And we went to our local theater and I got to see the upstairs like projection room,
Mm.
because my uncle worked there and I actually ended up working there, high school and summers. But, I just remember every single detail about that day. And so my obsession with the movie is carried on well into my adulthood. I have like a Beauty and the Beast tattoo. I have
Mm.
figurines all through my house, artwork, not just it influences me physically, but, I'm always reading uh, kind of like spin-off novels about it. Like it's just
Mm.
it influences my entire world. And I have a lot of people, to thank for that, like Disney and, Alan Menken. And it's an amazing film.
Um, and I don't want to overstep, and I wanted to include it. So please excuse me if I am sharing too much information. But you even made your engagement photos based off of Beauty and the Beast. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah,
That
they
was really important to me.
yeah, they were beautiful. They
Thank
were,
you.
yeah. And we're gonna give hopefully people the opportunity to see some of those photos later, so we can give your Instagram plug at the end of this. But yeah, it's I love those photos, and that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on for this podcast too, because I can't I can't think of anyone in my life who has actively one based their engagement photos off of a movie, which as a film lover that just speaks to me. But um yeah, I it speaks volumes as to what it as to how far reaching the Beauty and the Beast is, um
Well,
for
thank you. Yeah.
yeah, for girls and finding love. So
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, yeah. And there's the Stockholm syndrome to the movie or whatever, but that
So
wasn't the
no,
case in my relationship.
Sam, no. So, we were talking about me and my friend Tim Pham were talking about this last night, and he
Hmm.
ended up pointing out a video that a Vanity Fair did that brought real therapists on to talk about Disney characters,
Okay.
and yeah, there's nothing Stockholm syndrome about Beauty and the Beast, and you can rest assured knowing that a therapist said it, because the
Really?
thing is, well, I mean, think about it this way: we Stockholm syndrome is when you are led to believe something that isn't true because of your captor made you believe it, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
we as an audience are actively seeing the Beast change, and Belle never changes for him; he changes for her. So
Ooh.
she has a lot of liberties. Like, even though he was keeping her prisoner, she was easily able to just run out the front door and run back home. So it's
Right.
like, I don't think that she really was imprisoned, you know. And yeah, I think that it's so unfair that people say that it's Stockholm syndrome. So I think that you can rest assured and rest soundly,
I'm okay.
knowing that Bella is falling in love with the Beast for who he is. So
I'm definitely going to have to check out that video. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
you hear it, that's the first thing people say, like, "Oh, that's what you're into." I'm like, "What?"
Well,
No.
they can literally fuck off,
Yeah.
because they're not therapists. They're not therapists.
Right.
Um, so I didn't want to touch too much on Beauty and the Beast, just because I do feel that this one deserves its own episode.
Gosh,
But
yes. Mhm.
everyone knows that, or if you don't know, that's fine. This is some some trivia for you, but this was the first movie nominated for Best Picture that was animated. Um, but that isn't the award that I want to talk about because we can give all the credit to Alan Menken all day, but there is someone else who deserves a lot of the credit for the Beast and Ariel, and that is Howard Ashman.
Yes.
And do you know who he is?
Oh, yeah. Brilliant lyricist. When I think of Alan Menken, I think of Howard Ashman. They go hand in hand. They did Little Shop of Horrors together. They're
Hmm.
basic, like, obviously, how much I love Beauty and the Beast. So yeah, I know him.
Yeah. Well, at the time that they were writing songs for Beauty and the Beast, he was suffering from AIDS-related causes. Um, and so he unfortunately died 6 months prior to Beauty and the Beast's release. Uh, but there is a bittersweetness to the story because when that song, Beauty and the Beast, won Best Original Song, uh, the Academy at the time, they weren't really wanting. They wanted Mencken to accept the award, which seems crazy because the Academy wasn't new to having gay winners. I mean, The Life of
Hmm.
Harvey Milk had won Best Original Documentary, and they had gay and queer people on stage multiple times. But for some reason, they didn't want Bill Lodge to Ashman's partner Bill Lodge to accept the award, but Mencken wouldn't hear of it. So when they won the award, um, Mencken let Bill Lodge come up and accept the award for him. And this was a big represent. This was a huge moment for representation of people in the LGBT community who were affected by AIDS. Um, so I want to give a lot of credit and a moment for Howard Ashman because I feel that he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves. But that isn't to say that the filmmakers didn't understand his reach and how much he influenced them. Because at the end of Beauty and the Beast, there is a dedication that says, "To our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice, a beast his soul, we will be forever grateful." And I just think that is something I wanted to touch on and give a little bit of credit to something that I just don't see a lot of in a lot of videos or articles that cover the Disney Renaissance.
Oh, yeah. And what a beautiful statement. That's a beautiful quote. But, if you want a really great commentary about Howard Ashman, about this part of his life and how he, in his own words, he really related to the character of Prince Adam, well, the Beast. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in the most recent Beauty and the Beast Blu-ray bonus features. And if it's not, it's in the live actions. But it's really interesting and it's all about Howard. And, I just think it's really complimentary to, like you said, he's a big part of the Disney franchise in this film.
I'm so happy to hear that he's giving credit on the Blu-rays, um, and I will definitely check out that bonus features because yeah, like I said, he deserves not all the credit, but he deserves a lot of credit. So
Yeah. Hmm.
thank you, Howard.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, um, you have made me cry so many times, man. Uh, so let's move on. I know that everybody loves the Lion King, so we're gonna go ahead and discuss the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Uh, no, I do want to cover the Lion King eventually, but I do want to have somebody who can better represent African culture. Since we are two white people, I just don't
Yes.
think that we're the best people to talk about it.
Nope.
Um,
I'll talk about Beauty and
so
the Beast all day. but
Yes, ma'am. But let's go on to another white people problem movie, and that's Hunchback of Notre Dame. And I am 100% kidding, because it is way more far reaching and dark than just white people problems, because holy shit, does this push the line of a G-rated movie.
yep.
Now, is there anything in particular that you feel about the Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, for starters, it's the subject matter is so dark that, like you said, I cannot even believe that it's rated G. I saw that they wanted to, um, give a PG rating to it, and it would have been the first since the Black Cauldron. But I
Yep.
don't even think the themes in the Black Cauldron even relate to how dark and mature the Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Yeah,
goes
it's
through.
horrifying. Um, I watched this last night, and I mean, there's full on murder.
Mm-hmm.
There is there is talk of genocide of the Romani people, which of course are referred to as gypsies here. Which, I mean, now we know it's derogatory,
Yep.
but this, I mean, it speaks very true to the world of 1482 Paris, that they would be talking like this. But yeah, there's exotic dancing. Um, the villain is so evil that, I mean, they Disney actively made Frollo more evil in this movie, to kind of pull people away from the trope that being a Disney villain was cool or
Yeah.
hip. So yeah, I this was the first and only Disney production to actively use religious themes as a main focal point to the narrative. And I wanted to ask, you, as someone who is religious, do you think that the way that these themes are portrayed is respectful, or is there the daunting question, rather, is the daunting question of morality and damnation too scary and extreme for children?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question, Derek. But
I mean, yeah, answer as as honestly as you can. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I am religious, but I think the way the, antagonist Judge Frollo, that's the,
Mhm.
in my opinion, the most evil of the Disney villains, for his blatant cruelty. But I think the way he's represented and his message of morality and damnation is just too much for children. I know that Disney tried to switch Frollo's role, because he's a priest in the book, I think,
Mhm.
um, to a judge in the movie because they didn't want to upset the Catholic Church, and which I would
Exactly.
which I would say they're trying to stab away from religion in that instance. However, I think we all know the good and the bad side of people and religious power, and definitely in the church where they could do whatever they want and with no consequences during this time period represented in the movie.
Mm.
I don't think I even grasped the evilness and the dark things presented to me as a child like I understand them now. He talks of sinning amidst his lust for Esmeralda. He's smelling her hair,
Mm.
singing the song Hellfire. She has to choose him or burn. And, as a 7-year old, I don't think I realized how sexual the movie was or
Yeah.
how mature the song Hellfire itself was. It's just wow. And I know that the directors, Kirk Wise and Carrie Trudeau, who also directed Beauty and the Beast,
Mhm.
um, they had. Are you familiar with Tony Jay as an actor? He plays the voice of Frollo, and he was also the asylum keeper in Beauty and the Beast. Um,
No, no. Please educate me. I would love to know
yeah,
more.
he, brilliant actor, plays a great bad guy. And they loved working with him, in Beauty and the Beast, so that's why they brought him over. But, he just adds like this scariness to it. And I just, if I think that the question of morality and damnation is too scary and extreme for children, I'm gonna say yes, because, it was a dark, brutal world. And I don't think that as a child you grasp all of those dark subject matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I'm happy that you brought up Hellfire, um, because that was, I mean, watching it again, yeah, that's a lustful song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Disney almost cut that song, because one, I mean, they had to reanimate Esmeralda into fire because they said that she looked too nude.
Yeah, I read
Yeah,
that.
I
You
mean,
had to add clothes.
even now, I mean, it's. I'm like, oh my gosh, like they really, really like played with the themes of lust and like,
It was
yeah,
really
it's
rapey. It was a really
yeah,
rapey vibe.
yeah. And so this is often regarded as one of the worst of the Disney Renaissance, and it shares that weight with Pocahontas and the Rescuers Down Under. Um, and obviously, Pocahontas, we look at it now, and there's a lot of issues with the cultural subject matter, the way that it kind of satirizes Native American beliefs. But do you think that because of the themes that they tried to cover in Hunchback, that's why it's not looked back as fondly as the other movies?
I would think so. Um, I think, well, I don't know if you know this. They're bringing it back to the screen with the live action version.
Shut up.
Yes. And I would
Wow.
actually be happy if it was a darker movie, maybe PG-13,
Yeah.
because it's not going to carry on with kids. It's not like the whole theme of the whole movie. And, unfortunately, the people who are, gosh, just horrible to Quasimodo because of his differences in his face and
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's important for children to see. But I think the subject of religion and murder and genocide, how else are you going to do it? So
Yeah.
I would be really interested to see a live action dark film that's not a musical in this case, but maybe has, Alan Menken's score in the background.
I don't know. I would hope that it's a musical, in all honesty, because it is, in my opinion, the most sweeping of all the soundtracks. And Alan Menken actually said that the opening song "Bells of Notre Dame" is the best that he's ever written. So
That's like, that song's okay to me. It's good, it's beautiful, and I really like God Help the Outcasts. But
mm, mm,
it's
I
very,
love that one.
yeah, it's very choral like, it's like the songs are very like churchy, I want to say.
Yeah.
Choral, comprised, but none of the songs are memorable to me. And maybe if they
Mm,
did it again, um, as an adult, I would maybe think differently about it, because as a child, I can't I'm definitely remember going to see it in theaters. I definitely remember owning the VHS tape and having it in my house, but it wasn't one that I was like singing the songs to in my house, and I wasn't popping it in the VCR player,
right.
So
Right.
maybe if it was a musical, I would think this time around, I would think differently.
Yeah. Maybe it just needs like someone like Lynn Miranda Manuel to sign on with it as well, because I mean we've seen what he's done with Broadway productions recently, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's a way that him and Schwartz and Menken could all collaborate together and create something a little bit different and exciting, but still keep true to the original feel of the movie.
I'd be open to that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just me kind of crushing on Lynn Miranda. So,
I mean, who doesn't?
so let's go ahead and move on to the last movie that I wanted to talk about, which this is my least favorite of the Disney Renaissance films.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that I don't like it. There's so much to like about this film. But the movie in question is Tarzan. And to me, I feel as if even though Disney was utilizing new technology, it was the weakest of all of them. How do you feel about Tarzan?
We have very similar responses toward
Mm,
Tarzan. Everything that you have said, even though the animation was praised in the day, I'm not a fan of the animation. I thought it was too distracting.
yeah.
And especially, after the seriousness of Hunchback of Notre Dame, I think they might have went overboard in trying to make it kid friendly again, which isn't bad. But I just don't look at it as like a classic Disney film at all in the music
Yeah.
or the way the direction of the movie was going. So it's not a favorite.
Yeah, I mean, because I could see them wanting to be a little bit more kid friendly because, yeah, they did Hunchback of Notre Dame and then they did Mulan, which, of course, again, a movie that has jarring themes of war and death. And so I can see them wanting to go a more kid friendly route, but
Mm-hmm.
they could have easily done it without doing the things that they did. Like I let me just make it very, very clear. Like, I do not hate the songs in the movie. I actually listen to the Tarzan soundtrack quite a bit. I have a Spotify playlist that I made myself that I put songs by Phil Collins, who did music for Tarzan, in this actual playlist. But the placement of the songs themselves in the movie, I
Mm-hmm.
feel is so awful. It's so bad in my opinion. Like I hate to say this word, but I hate it.
Yeah.
I,
Oh, well, I was just going to agree with you. I mean, the opening scene, there's like it's a very serious scene where Tarzan's parents' ship is burning and they have to find
Mhm.
safety on a deserted island. And then this pop number seems to come out of nowhere. And it's like you said, not that the songs are bad, it's they're just very misplaced.
Yeah.
Although You'll Be in My Heart is a bop to me. I love that song.
Oh, it's so good. No, like I said, I listen to these songs by themselves. They're
Yes.
great. um, but I mean, even movies like Tarzan, like or not Tarzan, but Hercules, they do that sort of like gospel sound, but they also play Hercules off as like a satire where they're blending old school and new school. Like
Mm-hmm.
it works for me by having like people in the crowds acting like they're watching a football game and stuff like that. It
Mm-hmm.
works. But
Yep.
here it just seems so odd. Like it feels dated because while other Disney projects feel timeless because of their use of show tunes, it's like this movie that's taking place in the late 1800s should not be led by a drum soloist.
No.
it just it just doesn't seem. And and I know that they were actively trying to move away from their Renaissance formula, but I think it's interesting because the co-director Chris Buck ended up going on to be the co-director of Frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after Tarzan, this was the last movie for 12 years that won an Academy Award for Disney animation. So it's like, what were they thinking? Like, would they move away from why would they move away from their winning formula? Like, I know that you want to change things, and that's fine. You can change the animation, but you know, now that we're seeing everything kind of going back to the Disney Renaissance sort of setup, like, what do you think was going through their mind?
I don't know. I feel like they wanted to be cool and hip, and the even the animation like was based off of surfers and skateboarders like Tony Hawk. Like I just feel
Mm-hmm.
like they were just trying to be something just way out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think that at this time too, what was that show on Nickelodeon with like the skater kids in California? Do you know what
Oh,
I'm?
I do know what you're talking
Team
about.
Rocket.
What?
Team Rocket.
Team
or
Rocket. Okay.
or no
I
no
thought there
that's
was Rocket Power.
Rocket Power. That's
Yeah.
it. Team Rocket's from fucking Pokemon.
Okay.
um,
I'm like, oh.
no, but because that's I don't know if that was actually the same time. I feel like it was, but like there was this change where everyone was like into skateboarders and
Yes.
into surfing, and so
I love playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater, you know?
oh, it's so good
Right. But
on
I don't want to
PlayStation
watch
2.
it on Disney.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know, like I know that we're shitting on this right now, but I do like Tarzan as a whole. Like Jane is fantastic. I
Mm-hmm.
think that she is a wonderful. I mean, she's led by Mimi Driver, so obviously, like
Love her
she's gonna be
voice.
good.
Yes.
But something that really like pissed me off. So the voice of Tarzan was a Goldwyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he got the role because he was a Goldwyn.
Tony Goldwyn, right? He was a grandson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of MGM's founder.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this guy is not particularly a good voice actor. And like for instance, like they were gonna have Tarzan mimic, like when he was speaking to the animals, he was speaking in an American accent, but then when he was speaking to like Jane and her father, he was going to do British because obviously he's imitating them, but he couldn't do it. And it's just like, you know, that's the kind of thing is like you're going to go ahead and develop new technology to be able to you know, integrate CGI and animation together. You're taking all these steps to be awesome and set yourself apart, and then you go for a guy who can't even do a fucking accent.
And he couldn't do the Tarzan yell. The
Yeah.
actor that played Clayton had to do it for him.
Yes.
Which, you know, I enjoy Tony Goldwyn's character like on Scandal, you know, but just like you said, not a voice actor.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay. There is a big difference. I mean, it's okay to maybe step back, but yeah, I think that they were giving something to somebody who, just because of his name, and yeah, it's just those kinds of things that those things that were overlooked that just make me feel as if this project wasn't loved as much.
I would agree with that statement.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there was one more thing. Oh yeah. So Clayton is my least favorite Disney villain. But I wanted to talk about something that he brought to the Disney Renaissance, and that was probably the most brutal death.
Oh yeah, being hanged and showing it like the silhouette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is again, like this is one of those things that's like, you know, who is Disney paying at the MPAA? Because this is again a G-rated movie.
Right. And they show the parents' death. Like they're not blood. The act of the, you know, the jaguar doing it, but like they're laying there and then there's like bloody paw prints everywhere.
Yeah, blood on the ground.
Yes.
Like that shocked me. Because I mean, me and my partner were watching this all together, all these movies together, and like we were just like, what? What the fuck? G? This is rated G?
Right. And like, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I would just be like, if I had a kid, I would probably, like, not that I would be mad. I would feel that my kid would be watching like scary movies at like 12 years old. But if I took my like 6-year-old, I'd be like glancing over every like 5 seconds to make sure they were okay.
Oh, for sure. And like I've read though that this movie is the bloodiest of all the Disney movies, and like, you know, you don't think of it like that, but there are like cuts and blood on the, you know, on the ground, and so it's very interesting the direction they were trying to go in the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and it really sucks that this was the last of the Renaissance, because I feel like the one that deserves the spot instead of this is The Emperor's New Groove.
Oh, I watch that so much. It's unbelievable. I watch it now, like more so than I did as a child, I think.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievably hilarious, and there's so much to love as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. But yeah, that Sam, that kind of wraps up our conversation about the Disney
Oh
Renaissance.
my gosh, we went through it. And we didn't even
We
like,
did.
there's so much to talk about, and that's insane that we're at
Oh
the
yeah.
end.
Well, you know, obviously, maybe when I cover the different projects that are a part of the Disney Renaissance and have someone on who could represent the different cultures, maybe we can go back and kind of talk about the movie without discussing like the plots and the cultural significance of the plots, and maybe just talk about the making of.
Yeah, whenever you want to, have me on this podcast, I would be happy to join again. It's been great. Especially just talking about something that you love.
Yeah, it's an honor. I'm just so happy to have done this, but I'm so happy to have like-minded friends who are excited about this too. So I'm thankful and I'm grateful. Um, but anyway, yeah. My name is Derek Vandergrift, and you can find me at Memeing Maniac on Instagram. That's MEMEING MANIAC. You can also email any ideas, or maybe you just want to be on this show. You can email me at dereksmattress@gmail.com. And Sam, I don't know if you want to go ahead and close out and maybe give a plug of your own.
Oh, sure. Well, Samantha Postema, and you can find me on Instagram at Dogs, Disney, and Dumbbells. It's a lot of my dogs. I have 5, and a lot of Disney, and probably less of dumbbells since this whole thing has been going, and a lot more eating.
That's okay. We we need to eat.
Yeah,
So
we're all in the same, situation right now, so I
yeah,
think it's
like
pretty okay.
stress eating is okay right now.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you again so much. Until next time, this has been a man on a mattress who watches movies.